Want to see the worst boosting effect ever in a racing game? Ignite is a 2011 racing game developed by the indie team Nemesis Games and released on PC. The game received mixed scores both on Metacritic and Steam, with it completely fading into obscurity over the years. Now, I think it's time to dig up this trash to see how bad Ignite truly is. Let's analyze its problems, starting with the visuals. It's hard not to address the glaring aspect when first looking at this game: its visuals. Being this is an indie game, we shouldn't expect AAA graphics of 2011. Even when considering this, the game still looks ugly. It has very low texture quality, lacks a lot of object detail, and pop-in is very noticeable. Much of the effects, lighting, and shadows are also low quality. You can even see where the ground ends on some parts of the environment. It's a shame the visuals weren't polished enough, especially that other indie games around that time had a much better presentation. The AI is laughably bad. They don't pose much of a challenge as they aren't aggressive and you can usually outpace them very easily. They also have a hard time navigating the track properly. They can't slide their car when turning like the players can, so they understeer into every corner. This means they constantly hit walls, get stuck, and have to respawn. They also have trouble staying on the road, hopping on sidewalks and hitting the sidewalls. All these problems make the AI just not fun to race against. Ignite heavily marketed itself on its score system. During the race, you gain points from drifting, hitting objects, drafting, and driving. I'm not kidding. This score can also double as your nitrous, so using your boost will deplete these points. It can also help you at the end of a race, since your score will reduce your finishing time in the event. While this might sound cool on paper, its execution is horrendous. You gain way too much points, especially with some skins that give out point bonuses. The AI also doesn't do a good job managing their score, so you can usually win events by not using your nitrous or using it very infrequently. I had times where I saved up so much points that I could hold my boost down for the entire next lap without a fear of losing the event. I even won a race by not using my boost at all. Despite finishing 24 seconds after my opponent, I had enough points to completely negate this. There is very little skill or strategy needed, which completely defeats the purpose of this system. The sense of speed in Ignite is quite bad. We are supposedly going over 250 kilometers per hour, and yet it feels like I'm going half that. The camera does pull back a bit, but it has no shake and no FOV increase when reaching higher speeds. The only time the game feels somewhat fast is when boosting, but it's unbearable to look at. The camera shakes so violently, and the motion blur is extremely excessive. Thankfully, the motion blur can be turned off, but the fact that the developers were fine with how boosting looked is baffling to me. The track design in Ignite is very simplistic, but not in a good way. There are no jumps and only a few shortcuts. The roads are usually pretty wide with hardly any narrow sections or hazards in the road. While there's some elevation changes, the tracks are still mainly flat. There also aren't really any interesting set pieces or landmarks that would make you remember these courses. These courses are some of the most bog standard tracks in a racing game. Where do I even start with the physics? Well, firstly, there is no deformation model. Your car will get dents and scratches, but that's all the visual damage you'll see. There is no crumpling of body parts nor parts falling off. Secondly, your car is just a brick wall. When the AI drivers hit your car, they bounce right off you. This means you don't even have to worry about your opponents messing you up. You can also push around the other racers quite easily. Pinning them against a wall can send them flying or even phasing them into the ground. Thirdly, the handling model is very weird. It feels rather floaty due to the car's rear end kicking out way too much. The drifting slows you down considerably, which means you don't need to brake from many turns. When turning without drifting, every car understeers heavily. This is especially annoying when it feels like you should have entered a slide, but the game just refuses to. Overall, you get this inconsistent, imprecise handling model that you need to actually feel for yourself because it's just that awkward. Lastly, I cannot forget about the underwhelming prop physics. Props don't break at all on impact and are not sent flying with force when hit. There's hardly any momentum transfer from the vehicles to the props, so they fly over and around the car slowly every time. These are some of the most unsatisfying props I've ever hit in a racing game. While Ignite is certainly not as bad as other racing games I've played, it's still a very disappointing experience. From its ugly graphics, horrendous AI, exploitable score system, bad sense of speed, boring track design, and strange physics, this game failed to ignite anything. This has been Gamer Alex. I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a great day.